have to wait for it to rise.
Yeah. It's like a little roller coaster and stuff.
Does every journey you have to give it a chance?
Yes, yeah, and because it's been sat for some time, it will take longer to come up. If it's only been sat for half an hour or so, usually it's just the front that needs to rise, but the back will need to come up.
Shall I put the mirror out for you? Do you want that?
No.
Move in there.
Waste of time.
It just
The problem is it should have an opposite thread on the bolt.
Okay. Yeah.
And unfortunately someone replaced it with a normal bolt, with a consequence that as soon as it gets any wind pressure, it unscrews. And I actually tried to sort it out yesterday with Loctite, and it didn't work.
You can't you? That's what's weird. You have to feel like you're rising.
Yeah. It gives the engine a minute to get slightly warmer as well.
The problem is, unless you pick the revs up to over 1,000, it won't rise up.
Right.
It probably would have done originally.
Yeah.
But it's a bit long in the tooth now.
Hi everyone, welcome to Nightfall.Drives. Doug here, and today we're in Cyprus and we're in Paul's 1970 Citroën DS. It's a family affair, isn't it? With Kath and Joan in the back. So yeah, we're going along for a drive along the coast road. I think still, is it officially the coast road still?
Yes,
Yeah. And yeah, part of our lovely day out in Cyprus with the Paphos Classic Vehicle Club. I don't know where to start for. It's incredible to be experiencing a DS. It's obviously an iconic car. How did you end up with it?
Well, the story starts when I'm probably about 14 years old. My French teacher at the time, a gentleman called Mr. Gray, used to have a DS, and I thought this was the most beautiful car I'd ever seen, and was so much superior to the cars which the rest of the teachers drove. And occasionally he used to give me a lift home. Now this wouldn't happen nowadays, but
Yeah.
back in the 60s it wasn't uncommon. The main reason he gave me a lift home was because he was in love with the barmaid at my local pub. And he used to giving me a lift as an excuse to call into the pub to see his sweetheart. Anyway, unfortunately, this story doesn't have a happy ending for Mr. Gray, because he used to frequent the pub a bit too often at lunch times, and eventually the school governors got fed up with him coming back to the school a little bit worse for wear. So he got the sack, and his beloved barmaid married my mother's next door neighbour.
Yeah.
So, but it gave me a love of Citroëns. Because once you've driven in a DS, no other car is the same.
Yeah.
They're so smooth, they're so easy, comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just no comparison.
The first thing you notice going in is how soft everything is, and even sitting still. And now going along with, we had the speed humps back there, and it really does live up to the reputation.
Yeah, yeah, and even at 50-year-old, the car still has that feel to it.
And it was very popular as well, wasn't it, at the time it was launched?
Well, yeah,
It caused a bit of a stir at least.
it caused quite a stir at the Paris Motor Show when it was first exhibited in '55. So much so that they actually took 80,000 orders in the first week. That's actually been a record which stood until fairly recently, and was actually only broken by the Tesla.
Oh yeah.
When the Tesla was launched, apparently that exceeded the 80,000 orders by quite a margin. I think they took 250,000 or something like that. But you can understand why it caused such a stir, because it looked, there wasn't another car on the road, particularly a mass-produced car, which was actually looked anything like it or gave the ride comfort for the value.
Yeah, and well, there's obviously the famous hydraulic suspension, the ride quality, and also the design of the thing. Looking around earlier, the details of it, it's all a sort of cohesive piece of design and very aerodynamic.
Yeah, it's futuristic. You've got to understand that, back in the 50s, the space race and Dan Dare and spaceships were very popular, and it captured the imagination.
Yeah.
I suspect it took Citroën more than 3 years to actually fulfil the orders they took in the first week. Because they just weren't geared up to produce that many cars at the time.
Yeah, and I imagine it was a bit more complex than the previous models anyway.
A little bit so. The only real extra complication is the suspension. All the other parts were actually already there. The front wheel drive came from the Citroën Avon. The engine is actually based upon a design which was in the Citroën Avon, and dates from the early 30s. And they carried on with that engine all the way through the life of the Citroën, well into the 70s.
Yeah, what's the engine spec?
Well, this is actually a 1985cc engine, 4-cylinder, natural aspiration. It runs through a 4-speed gearbox, which has a column change in this particular case.
Yeah.
This car is unusual in that it actually has a brake pedal, because most Citroën DS's had a brake button, which was a rubber dome mounted on the floor. And it has the reputation of basically the brakes are either on or off. There's very little proportionality with the brakes.
Yeah, so it's very much a button.
But the same thing happens with the brake pedal. They merely took the button away and put the pedal in its place. But that was actually a very short-lived thing with the DS. It didn't last for very long, and they went back to the button a couple of years after this car was produced.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. And it's good to know that you're still awake in the back as well. It's not, you're not too comfortable.
Because it doesn't make noise, the indicator, does it?
I can hear
Yeah.
it. Oh, can you? Yeah, Paul car.
I hear it
I
at
heard
all.
it actually. That I could hear something. Yeah.
I can hear it. I just make up a little tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. So well, you explained it, how you fell in love with the Citroën, the model and so on. How did you come about this one and this particular one?
Well, this particular one, we actually know the history of it from day one. We know the names and addresses of all the owners. The car eventually was owned by a chap who lived near Oslo. He transferred to the UK, but didn't take the car with him initially. He sold the car on to, we think, a relative. He then found out that he could take the car to the UK, so went back and repurchased the car. So the car actually was owned by the same person twice. He then kept it in the UK for, I think, probably about 6 years, and during that period it was used on the Antiques road trip in I think Series 13.
Yeah, I think it was a 2016 or thereabouts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And occasionally that programme is repeated on both the BBC and also on the other channels. I think it's Really is the channel it quite often features on.
Yeah, so it's famous already before even this. So.
Well, I suppose so.
We didn't know.
But we didn't know about it
yeah.
when we bought it.
All flew. We found out.
I suppose it's a good sign that the same owner came back to it, and then it's been used on a very long trip. And how's it been in your experience, your ownership experience?
It's absolutely superb. It's my favourite car to drive. And we own 7 classic cars, but this has got to be the easiest and most comfortable and best drive ever. I'd never driven a shift, a column shift before. I'd never driven a left-hand drive car before, but within half an hour of getting in the car, it just feels right.
Yeah,
Just feels right.
I'm pleased to hear that it's turned out to be, what you hoped.
Yes, yeah. It's a bit better than we hoped, to be perfectly honest.
We didn't like blind. Have a couple of photographs.
Oh right, yeah.
Well, probably a dozen photographs, but
You've got to take a punt sometimes.
Yep. We had a bit of a problem getting it into the country because it was just after Brexit, and unfortunately the company I had hired to bring the car in decided to take the car from Southern Ireland to Northern Ireland, then across to Scotland, and then down into England, and they then shipped into Cyprus from there. Unfortunately, the Cypriot authorities then viewed it as being an import from the UK, so wanted to charge me a lot of money, like 30% of the value of the car as an import duty.
So yeah, not the best timing for.
No, fortunately, we managed to find a very efficient lady in Nicosia who was willing to speak to a very nice lady in Dublin, and within half an hour of these two ladies getting together, they had sorted the problem out. They allowed us to bring the car in. It was brilliant.
So it's only really a technicality.
Yep. But all the other people we were dealing with, this was insurmountable. Unless I paid the 30%, I couldn't have the car.
So I suppose being part of a collection, you probably don't. I'll start that bit again. Or I could show him up on. I could name and shame. Yeah. So I suppose being part of a collection, how often do you use the DS?
We probably drive this once a week, I would think.
Yeah.
Tries to. Weather permitting.
One of the benefits of being in Cyprus, we get to drive the cars far more often than we would back in the UK.
Absolutely.
Because the winter's so much drier.
Is it the sort of thing that benefits from a bit of regular use?
Yes, yeah. Citroëns in particular. You don't want to let a Citroën sit for any length of time. That's when you start getting leaks.
Your indicator's up.
Thank you. Citroëns leak all classic cars leak.
Yeah.
You've heard the phrase, if your classic car isn't leaking, it's run out of oil. Well, with a Citroën, you not only got to cope with the oil leaking, you've got to cope with the suspension fluid leaking as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Touch wood, we've not had too much of a problem with this particular car, but I have two other Citroëns as well. Occasionally you come down and there's a bit of a puddle on the road.
I suppose you know if the car doesn't rise when you start it, then you know there's probably a problem there. Or...
Usually you can spot the green fluid before that happens.
Oh, yeah. Things are readily available for these cars to keep them going? Or?
Yes, yeah. In fact, the DS is a little bit like the 2CV. You can buy virtually any part for the car. There were so many produced, and there are still so many being used, that there are lots of original parts, but there are also a lot of aftermarket produced parts. It also has the advantage that a lot of the panels are actually bolt on and bolt off, they're not welded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the front wings are held on by two bolts. The back wings are held on by a single bolt. The single bolt is exactly the same size as the wheel bolt. So you can actually take the wing off with the wheel brace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's engineers thinking about the mechanics, or
Yeah. But they're not the easiest of cars to work on, and a lot of mechanics hate Citroëns, particularly the older Citroëns, purely and simply because they are different, and some of the solutions to mechanical problems are a little bit off the wall. This has inboard disc brakes at the front.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, to change the brake pads on them takes about 8 hours.
Oh, right. Just so much to get out of the way first.
Yeah. The fit out of this car is it actually isn't a DS. Strictly speaking, this is actually an ID. Citroën, when they first produced the DS, they were so expensive that you could actually buy 1.5 Jaguars for the same price that you could buy one of these. As a consequence, they actually brought out a cheaper version, which was called an ID, and the ID didn't have power steering and didn't have power assisted brakes, and had a slightly cheaper trim inside.
Yeah. I'd never heard of that. It wasn't like a DS ID. It was just it was a new model.
No, they only nerds like me who know about these things would actually even know there was such a thing as an ID. But this car, from the chassis number, we can tell should have been an ID. However, the guy the Norwegian guy who bought the car first must have wanted an upgraded car, because the car is factory fitted with power steering and power assisted brakes. It has a roof lining, which IDs didn't come with, but DS's did.
Oh, right, it was just bare metal, was it? Or...
It's actually fiberglass. But it was just white painted fiberglass. The colour scheme of the car is unusual in that most DS's, and certainly all IDs, had white roofs.
Yeah.
They didn't have a painted roof.
Oh, right. And it's the original paint, is it?
We don't know. We suspect it was repainted back in the 90s, but we don't know. The way some of the paint is now cracking, I suspect it might be original.
Well, it looks reasonable, you know, but I haven't closely inspected
It's
the
got,
condition, but
it's got the
pretty
odd
good.
defect in it,
Yeah.
but to be perfectly honest, I don't want to do anything to it. I want to keep it in its present state. I think if we started messing about with the paintwork, we're either going to have to redo it completely, or basically just touch up those bits which are too bad.
Yeah.
But the seats have obviously been recovered, they can't be original.
Yeah, and
They're too good.
they're really nice actually. Very cosseting, and you sink into the car, don't you? You feel very much part of the car in that
Yeah.
way.
A lot of people don't like them, they think they're too soft.
Yeah, I guess maybe on a longer journey, counterintuitively, it might be a bit. I don't know. Yeah, a bit less support, isn't there?
Yeah, it's not the best car to drive if you've got a bad back. Because there isn't the amount of support there should be, thank you. That's the other thing about Citroëns is they very rarely have self-cancelling
Yeah.
indicators.
Yeah, and there's not really a bright light to show you, is there?
Well, the lights are all a little bit dim anyway. We could do with taking the dashboard out and all the bulbs replacing.
But speaking of lights, the headlights are connected to the steering, are they?
They are, yeah. It's very simple mechanical connection. They're cables, basically.
Yeah.
But it's actually only the long distance lights which actually move, and they will actually only come on if you put main beam on.
Right.
Because they're actually distance lights and they don't dip. So when you actually dip the headlights, those actually will go out.
They're just fixed.
Yeah, well, they actually go out.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The other thing is they are not of very much use, because unless you're driving down a dark country road without any other traffic coming the other way, they're no use at all.
Yeah.
Because they're switched off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd assumed that it was all the lights all the time.
No. It's just the two inner ones. It's also a bit misleading, the indicators at the back, because the indicators are actually in the roof line.
Yeah.
They're in the little pods which are the extension of the roof. Most people are looking for the indicators down below, which are actually just reflectors.
Yeah, it's a nice bit of design actually. It looks good where they are, but yeah, it is unusual.
Well, it's the sort of car that Buck Rogers would have driven. Except you're too young to know who Buck Rogers was.
I've heard of him.
Ask your grandfather, he'll tell you. But the lights are remarkably good actually. For a car of this age, they actually do provide quite a good illumination.
Yeah, and you don't seem to have the yellow shade of headlights that I think, you know, for some the French regulations stipulated.
Yes.
And stuff. But
Yeah. That's because the car was supplied to Norway.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Paul, for the ride.
You're welcome.
And Joan. And yeah, it's been fun. You still comfortable back
Yeah, it's a comfortable. I'm still awake.
there? Yes. We've survived the journey and conscious. That's a good start. But it's been a huge amount of fun and such an interesting car.
It's the next one.
Next one, I think.
That's someone's drive.
Just in front of the green bin.
That's the one.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, such an iconic car, and it lives up to the reputation of the smooth ride and the comfortable interior and quirkiness.
Glad you've enjoyed it.
Really have. Thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed the video, check out the rest of the ones from Cyprus or the other playlists on owner stories. And
Will do.
We'll see you for another one. Cheers.
I particularly enjoyed your video of the MGTC. That was very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Enjoyed that one as well.